Hello, the internet. This is Eric Grooms talking to you. For a while now, I've kind of wanted to start a kind of movie, television, entertainment review kind of deal to share with friends and family. It's not uncommon for people to ask what I think about a certain thing because I'm a huge movie and television, entertainment media, a nerd, dork, whatever you want to call it. So people ask my opinions on the interwebs and stuff like that. So I've been wanting to start like a little show of sorts to share those thoughts, and also because I obviously enjoy it a lot. So yeah, let's see if I can turn this into a show and maybe get something out of it at some point. You know what I'm saying? Become internet famous like all those other internet famous people. But anyway, I hope at some point to kind of turn this into more of an actual show with segments and all the assets where I say this thing's gonna happen and there's like a little animation or something that happens. That'll take a lot of work, and I don't have the programming software that I would need to do that myself. So I'd have to use somebody else's. So there's a lot of roadblocks when it comes to that kind of stuff. But there should be nothing keeping me from sharing my thoughts and opinions about movies and TV shows and things like that. So, this is that age-old creative maxim or motif or whatever you want to call it, that you just have to start somewhere. So let's start. So anyway, I guess we'll just begin with what I saw recently, and my thoughts on that. Last weekend, I went to two films in the theater, and one of them was really nice and lovely, and the other one was not. You might be able to guess at least one of those based on the current release schedule. It was a very intense dichotomy of two totally different things, totally different emotional states. And in hindsight, I think I did it backwards. But anyway, we'll just go ahead and jump into it. On Saturday of last weekend, my mother and I went and saw Downton Abbey. I knew that my mom had always watched Downton Abbey, and she loves that kind of time period British culture stuff. So I knew months ago that this movie was going to be coming out, and I had never seen a minute of the series. So this will also serve as kind of a quick little review of the series as a whole as well. But knowing that this movie was coming out, and I figured this is like an easy win in the books, that I can go take my mom to see a movie that we're all gonna enjoy, one of those kind of things. So I started watching the series from the beginning, and it's good. I will say overall, it's a good show. I understand why people love it. It's very charming, and it's like a less soap opera-esque soap opera, if that makes any sense. Like it's not totally ridiculous like a soap opera would be, but it's very, very melodramatic, which that's entertaining as hell. It tugs at your heartstrings. It makes you laugh. It did make me cry a couple times, but as somebody who has watched a lot of different media over the years, I am now well versed in that manipulation, that kind of manipulation that you get in shows and movies like that. So sometimes I have a hard time enjoying it because I'm like, I know that they're manipulating me into feeling a certain way. But there's a balance. Sometimes you see that and it's just a little too much, uh, slapping you in the face to make you feel a certain way, and I kind of roll my eyes. And then there's a balance where sometimes, if you do it really well, even though I know I'm being manipulated to feel a certain way, it feels good to feel that certain way, if that makes sense. Sometimes there's elements in movies and TV shows that make you cry, and it feels good to feel that way in that moment. So the series overall was pretty dang good. Um, Spoiler alert, big spoiler alert, spoiler. For anybody who hasn't seen the series and wants to watch the series, uh, I'm going to go ahead and spoil things because it's been out for a long time and it's on Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you can go watch it. Stop watching this and go watch it, and you won't be spoiled anything. I hope you don't make that decision because that'll mean you go away for months and don't come back to my channel to watch this video. But anyway, I knew that Dan Stevens' character, cousin Matthew, would be leaving the show at some point. That was such a pop culture touchstone at the time that even if you weren't watching the show but you paid attention to that world of entertainment, I knew that Dan Stevens was somebody who was like meant for bigger things, and so it was kind of all the talk that he something happened to him in the show and he is gone from the show now to move on to bigger and better things, which is totally warranted because he is very good. But anyway, even knowing that was coming, and I knew how it happened, it was kind of funny because every time he was in a situation like that, for the whole second and third season, I was like, "Is this the moment? Is this the moment?" And when it finally happened, it totally made sense that was the moment. Like when I saw it coming, it's in a finale of like the third, or I think it's the third season. So I was like, "Oh yeah, it's happening now. I can tell. Things are nice for him and his family. So something's gonna happen to him." I'm trying to be a little vague, but I mean, you should know by now. So there are moments like that even though I knew that was coming, it was somewhat mildly bothersome. But when Sybil passed away in the show, and sorry for that spoiler, that one did actually legitimately bring tears to my eyes. And it also educated me because I learned some things about you know that particular situation and how common it can be, and also it made me look up history. Like at this time period, was there anything they could have done that would have saved her? And yeah, so that was nice. But anyway, back to the movie. So I watched the whole series, enjoyed the whole series, and kind of got to be a fan myself, so that I could enjoy this lovely movie with my mom. And we went and saw it at an Alamo Draft House. Obviously, they're not sponsoring me because I'm brand spanking new to this, but have some free advertising. I always love to go to Alamo. My mom had never been. Well, I think we may have been once, but she didn't remember anything about it. So she had no idea of the concept of they're going to be serving us food during the movie. It's fine. Like, we don't need to go to a restaurant afterwards or before. Everything will be taken care of. The idea of going to Alamo was to enjoy some of the special dishes that they had lined up for that movie, but we were too late. It took a couple weeks to find time that both of us could go. So So unfortunately we missed out on that, but that's okay. Still had some good food. But the film itself was very enjoyable. I will say it was extremely predictable. Um, when people complain on the interwebs about fan service, this was one of the most fan servicey films that I think I have seen in my memory, at least in recent memory, because uh, it was so much of the exactly what you think should or would happen in this situation based on seeing all of those seasons prior, going into this. And it had a little bit. It felt like a final chapter to these people's stories because everything ended up so happy. It felt kind of weird to my mother and I, because if you've seen the series, like, it's not always all happy, and it kind of ended up being all happy in this film. But I think that's because it is a one-off, 2 hours story, and they don't want to leave you with a bad taste in your mouth, obviously. But they did leave some kernels there. I feel like where the story could go on years down the road, and they've written things into it that leaves some wiggle room if things happen in the real world, i.e., certain national treasure actors passing away or not being able to come back in some other way. They could still move on with the story if they wanted to. Yeah, the movie was extremely predictable. I think there was like one twist that I didn't quite get right, but everything else, like, I knew where it was going. And my mom leaned over to me and did the whole, I think this is going to happen thing one time. And after the movie, we discussed we discovered the fact that both of us thought about leaning over and saying what we thought was going to happen next, but we resisted that urge, knowing that could be annoying, especially to other patrons at the movie theater, not just to each other. But yeah, it's extremely predictable. But sometimes you want that. Sometimes that is the right thing for a pop culture iconic show to just give the people what they want. And I think that that bears out in how well the movie did at the box office. I was surprised to find out how well it was doing after the first couple weeks. I haven't looked at the details on the budget or anything like that, so I don't know if they're like making all the money that they need to make. But I wasn't expecting that movie to be in the top 2 in the first couple weeks, which I believe it was. And this is a note about my abilities as a presenter of this information. I will get better at knowing all the statistics and stuff like that, especially if people are watching and give me an incentive to make a better show. So, side note over, back to the movie. So yeah, overall, I would say it was a good movie. If this was a series that I wanted to own on home video, I would also buy the movie. So I would have the whole thing together. And maybe someday they'll probably release a full series and movie package, I'm sure, because they want to make money. Who doesn't? I want to make money. So anyway, so we did that first on Saturday. And then I went and saw another very different movie on Sunday last weekend. And man, was it different. And in hindsight, as I said before, in hindsight, I wish I had seen them switched up, because I went and saw something light and fluffy and just lovely and makes you feel all warm and gooey inside. And then I went and saw something that makes you feel hopeless and depressed and sad. and that was Joker. I went and saw Joker on Sunday, and the film is terrific and horrific. It's a very well made film. It's very powerful in the way it makes you feel for the character, against the character, against society. It's a very, very. It's disturbing. That's like the best description for the movie. Um, uh, but the the movie is tense throughout, um, and you can't help but feel that tension all over the entire movie, like almost from the beginning. And I will say, for me, that was probably aided by the real world facts that I felt uncomfortable the entire movie. And it's sad that this is the state of affairs, but I genuinely felt uncomfortable the entire film because I didn't know if somebody was going to stand up and start shooting everyone in the theater that I was in. But there was part of me that kind of said, I'm not going to change the way I live. I'm not going to stop going to movies, which I love the theater experience. That's something that I've always enjoyed. That's not going away for me. So if that's how it ends, so be it. It's irrational. I get that, and it's a hot button issue, but it is a reality. Unfortunately, luckily nothing seemed to happen that I'm aware of. But I will say, in the theater I was in, there was a man in a black hoodie, no less, with his hoodie up, that walked out of the theater 3 times and came back in. I'm sure he had to pee or take phone calls or whatever, but man, like, I thought about getting up a couple times to go use the restroom or whatever, and I was empathetic to the other patrons in the theater, thinking, I'm a big guy with a beard, and even though I wasn't wearing anything threatening, not that any clothes are threatening to begin with, but a black hoodie with the hood pulled up is kind of close to as threatening as possible in that situation. But anyway, I digress. That's a whole other topic that I'm willing to discuss more, but I don't want to overtake my thoughts on the film overall by that bullshit. Pardon me.